There's no point in me bringing my own if I
I
have another
could
one here.
still use it very well.
Yeah.
You guys ready?
I still prepare
No,
for
we
me.
haven't started yet.
I haven't
You guys
given
ready?
up on it. Yes, sir.
Call this meeting to order. It is 5:31, sorry. 5:31.
Cool fuss.
Number 2, health plan compensation and proposed changes. Mr. Carmona.
Good evening, Board President Gandara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. Once again, I'm before you to review some of the proposed changes and plan designs for plan year starting July 1st, 2017. I was about to say 16. It's been a day. Okay, so for information purposes, during our last meeting, I was requested to bring back some of the information that we highlighted during one of our presentations. And that information includes the comparison between what's being contributed on behalf of the employees. The comparison is between Socorro ISD, Clint ISD, El Paso ISD, and Isleta ISD. And we looked not only at the amount that's being contributed on behalf of each benefit eligible employee, but also a highlight was the out-of-pocket amount that's is being considered when looking at the benefit itself. Because just to make a quick comparison in between two self-funded health plans, if we look at Socorro ISD and Isleta ISD, the employer contribution for employee only, there might be a difference on the table itself, but if down below on the table that starts with individual out-of-pocket, that's where you see more of a difference, because that's the actual amount that the employee will have to out-of-pocket for them to be able to receive the highest level of coverage from the plan itself. Then we look at the total enrollment of employees. In this particular case, the total enrollment that we're looking at is up to the month of December 2016. I was asked to bring information in regard to utilization, just so we can have an idea of how is it that we're spending our monies or our fund, how are we depleting our fund. And what you see before you on the slide is mainly the expense that we're experiencing as a group. The slide or the information provided does separate expenses in terms of base, current, and trend contribution. It does include non-catastrophic, inpatient, outpatient, professional, and other services. The important number here to look at is at the very bottom of that table titled Account Summary per Member per Year basis. And the last line tells you the medical and pharmacy plan spend. That's how much money we're spending. And it illustrates the increase between the prior year, between the last 12 months against the current 12 months that we're looking at, which are October 2015 through September 2016. And we'll look at those periods because that's the actual claims data that we have and are able to study and document through the number of claims that have been processed through Cigna. On the comment section, again, you'll see how much has been spent by the plan, and there is an increase about 6%. It went from $5,212 per member per year to $5,527. We have also discussed the levers in terms of what is it that we can do in regard to making some modification, plan design changes, and so on and so forth. We talked about educating our population, encouraging our members to seek establishing a relationship with a primary care physician, seek specialty services as well, modify the way our formulary works right now in terms of prescriptions to where we implement a step therapy program, the value pharmacy drug list. And I was asked to bring for a comparison in terms of what we will be looking at for this 3-year phase plan. And technically speaking, we're presenting the information to you in 3 years. But we discussed during our last meeting that perhaps there's a possibility, again, based on what we experienced as a group, that after we implement our first phase, it may not be necessarily on 2017-2018 plan year when we implement phase 2. But this is for us to have an idea of what we're looking at or what we're trying to achieve, because our deficit at this point is about 4.5 million, which we're trying to recoup or reduce our deficit incrementally rather than do it all at once. So I was, again, this is just some of the changes that are going to be, we're looking at implementing phase 1, which is where we're requesting for review. And I was asked to bring numbers in terms of what we are anticipating the savings would be per phase. So if in fact we were to implement 3 phases for year 2017, 2019, and 2020, you'll see that for the first phase, for phase 1, we're anticipating to reduce our deficit for about 1.5 million. On phase 2, about 3 million, and hopefully by phase 3, reach our goal of decreasing our deficit by 4.5 million. Why I keep saying that hopefully this will be the case is because through experience, once we implement changes, once we make changes to a plan design, populations tend to shift as well. So an employee who might right now be on the premier plan, as we increase cost or make changes to the plan itself, they might consider shifting to another option, possibly the base plan. So what I'm trying to get to is that if right now, looking at numbers, we're looking at a population of, for discussion purposes, of 1,000 people enrolled on the premier plan and 1,000 people enrolled in the base plan, as we shift or as we make those changes, those numbers will shift as well. Therefore, the numbers that you see on the slide might change as well. The numbers that you see right now is what we're experiencing as a group. Other factors that might play a role in this is nature. Naturally, we're not getting any younger. Our population continues to get older. We're hoping that by the implementation of the wellness initiatives, our participation, our population will engage, and we're hoping that they'll become seeking other alternatives in terms of lifestyle. As you know, as we mentioned during the last workshop, we're bringing biometric screenings to our employees. For those employees that don't have the ability to take time off from work or travel after, or they don't have anyone to take care of their children because they just don't have those means. They think that it's an extra expense if they make an appointment with a physician and go have their annual done. Then we thought, what can we do? How can we assist our employees know their numbers and become hopefully a healthier population? Then, as I mentioned, the biometric screenings were approved to where we're bringing those screenings to the campus, to where the employee won't have to out of pocket a co-payment. All they need to do is make the time to participate. So just like this and other initiatives such as partnerships with fitness centers, we're trying to, again, get our population engaged. Again, this is just a summary of what we're trying to accomplish by phase 3, or the 3rd year of implementation. It shows that our goal is to reduce our deficit. The total reduction percent within all plans, once all three phases implemented, it's approximately 9.6%. An interesting piece of information that we included to this workshop is the results of a survey that was conducted by TASB, and the health insurance survey shows that about 90% of the school districts in the state of Texas are insured under TRS, and 10% of them are fully insured or self-insured. But what I find even more interesting is that on the box next to it, in the text, it informs us that some 95% passed all or some of the additional cost onto employees, regardless of if they're part of TRS or self-insured. It's practically being pushed to employees, which is different than what we're trying to do. We have discussed the district contemplating or looking into the possibility of increasing their contribution per employee per month, and also, like I mentioned, make gradual changes to what we offer in terms of our health plan. In addition to that, the study or the survey tells us that what the employee or the amount that need to be contributed by an employee when it's considered or put against the median. And the TRS Active Care 1 high deductible plan is comparable to what we offer on the high deductible plan, meaning that their most affordable plan is one of the plans that have the highest deductible, and in comparison with ours, if you put it against our premium plan, the premium plan has a very rich coverage. So whether it is with a plan that's being fully managed through or administered through active care or self-insured, by far Socorro is offering not only a very rich health plan, but a very affordable premiums that evidently, it's not helping us reduce the cost or deficit that we have at this point. I don't know if at this point there are any questions in regard to the information that I provided.
Any questions from Mr. Carmona? Mr. Ayub.
Mr. Carmona.
Yes, sir.
If we could go back to the slide with the district comparison, I think it was your first or second slide. So the comment you were making a moment ago in reference to TRS Active 1, that's what El Paso ISD uses, and so does Clint. So an employee there, El Paso still has them at employee only at 0? Or were you talking about TRS, the Active Select plan? Because they have them at 38.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ayub. So you're looking at
El Paso ISD.
EPISD?
Yes, sir. And I was looking at the 2 TRS, well, they have 3 TRS plans, but I was looking at the lower of the scale, the ones with the more out-of-pocket cost.
Okay,
Because
so
I was looking at your graph a minute ago, and it kind of doesn't, I know we're talking about 2 different things, but it
Right.
wasn't matching there.
yes, so here, if we were to look at cost, you're right, employee only, it's showing 0, but if we were to look at out-of-pocket, is $6,500.
Right, it's huge. I know.
So it comes down to pay me now or pay me later. But in this case, especially in comparison to the TASB survey, it's more so for the employee, pay me later, because the cost is being shifted over to the employees.
And in the Isleta plan that you have listed up there, it is a little deceiving because Plan 4 is the most out of pocket. It's the most affordable to the employee now, but it's the most out of pocket. So it's not their best plan. Plan 1 is their best plan.
That is correct, yes.
But that would cost an employee with their family $1,000 a month.
Correct.
Okay. Could we then, I don't know if you need to go to a slide, but you made a comment a minute ago that once the plan is fully implemented, if we do the 3-year, hopefully, at this point, if nobody would change insurance or coverage, they'd stay where they are. You said there would be a 9% savings. How do you calculate that?
So we look at, like I mentioned, we looked at 12 months worth of data. We include anything from a primary care physician visit to anything that could possibly be considered catastrophic or a severe illness. And I mentioned that we look at that data because that's what we have experienced so far as a group. Can I guarantee that next year we'll have one person that will be, hopefully not, diagnosed with cancer? I can't. We might have two, we might have three, and so on and so forth. So we can only anticipate based on what we have experienced. We can make changes and propose those changes based on what we are spending. And like I said, more likely if changes are implemented, there is a possibility that the populations from the groups will also shift. And that, as a result, will also change those numbers that you see before you. So we can make an educated decision based on what we have seen in the past years, in this case, in terms of data in the last 12 months.
And I fully understand. I realize this is shifting ground, and we also don't know what the cost of a particular medical procedure will jump up or come down and so forth. That part I understand. But to have a 9% savings over a 3-year period is a very large savings.
Correct.
And I'm wondering if we're accruing one savings on top of another one, or if we're looking at what the savings would be per year. Because a 9% savings, Mr. Carmona, is a large savings.
Right. And we're not, I think that perhaps this slide
Yes.
somewhat makes reference to the point, and you're absolutely right. We would look at, in this case, per se, phase one, and we're only anticipating that we will be saving 1.5 million, which is a third, more or less, of what we're trying to decrease in terms of our deficit. Will that be beneficial? Absolutely. We will at least be decreasing that deficit. Can we guarantee that that will be the case for phase two? We don't. I can't tell you that that will be the case, because not until that we have gone through that phase one that we will look at 12 months worth of data again, and we will come back forth and, provide that information to the board. But for now, again, based on what we're experiencing as a group, this is the best case scenario of what we can proactively take care of, rather than perhaps not do anything for the next 2-3 years, and then be looking perhaps at phase number 3 rather than an incremental changes.
So maybe you can help me understand, because for whatever reason in my mind it's still not real clear. If what you're saying is that between, on year 1, maybe 3% savings, year 2, 3% savings, year 3, 3.5% savings, and so over a 3-year period we're going to have 9.5% savings, I guess that's one way to look at it. Or are you saying that if nothing would change, I mean, we're on a path of $47 million of cost. Are you saying that between now and 3 years, if nothing would change, and obviously that's a big if, in year 3, our cost for healthcare to the district would be 9.5% less? Is that what you're saying?
Based on the numbers you see before you, yes.
Sir.
But I can tell you that based on the last report that we received in terms of expenses, we are already at 51 million.
Right, we're increasing. I realize
Right. So it's safe to say that that's a conservative amount.
And then another question at this point, I know you have more information, probably other people have other questions. If the board was to approve doing the 3 phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, I think sometimes as we look down the road, it kind of looks like the numbers get pretty big, and they do, but realistically, they're still a lot lower than other places in some regard. And again, we want to give our employees, to the best of our ability, an opportunity to react. However, if we did that, we could do phase 1 next year, and then as we're about to do phase 2, not only could we postpone that a year if we needed to, but we could modify that if we needed to. For example, we could change the deductible or something if we needed to at that point, if things were looking better, and so forth, right? So there would be an opportunity for us to still look at that and try to be proactive with the employees, because like Mr. Guerra or somebody mentioned, it kind of is a hit from 2 sides. You're going to pay a little bit more a month, and now you're going to pay a little bit more every time you visit the doctor, but it's in my mind, it's still not a huge expense. I mean, but We could look at that in subsequent years, based on you all's advice, see if we need to do an adjustment, and hopefully it wouldn't be an adjustment higher, but maybe lower for the employee. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You are correct. And another point that I forgot to mention that was also discussed during the last workshop is us looking into the possibility of opening an employee health center. That itself could save us some money. Will save the school district some money. But you're absolutely right. It's a 3-year implementation. Would it be 1 year soon after the other? Probably not. We're hoping that that won't be the case. But if our goal is to reduce the deficit in 3 years, this will be what we will be looking at up to 2020.
And based on what we know today, this is a good scenario, phase 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
But we will know a year from now, we may need to modify phase 2 or 3.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So there'd be some opportunity to look at that.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. I'm okay for now, Mr. Gandara.
Any more questions? Mr. Carmona.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Gandara, Dr. Espinosa, board members. The part that I'm going to go over was a request from the last board workshop as to what are we looking at with this change and with this proposal for each employee's paycheck, and how will the employee be affected with the net pay. So I asked Selena Stiles, Director of HR, to run simulations in our Tyler Munis system to do a simulation on employees that are the least paid for each pay grade. So what I'm going to show you right now are actual paychecks. They don't look like a pay stub, but they have the information that a pay stub contains. And each employee that we gathered information on, we listed the lowest paid employee per pay grade. So the first one that I'm going to go over is auxiliary. Now, I don't want to confuse you also. This first slide, it's important to understand how to read these, because from this slide forward, this is really what you're going to see. On the left-hand side, there's a blue line. So the left-hand side, you actually see two paychecks for an employee, and on the right side is 2 paychecks as well. This particular slide shows the auxiliary pay grade 1, which is 401. And we gathered the lowest paid employees. The reason why on this particular slide you see pay grade 401 on the tan and on the pink is because we have several employees that we only have 1 employee in the school district with health insurance getting paid $8.80 an hour. No other employee gets paid $8.80 an hour. So I wanted to give you all scenarios on that employee, and then the next highest paid employee on the auxiliary pay scale, which earns $9.01. Now, right beside each one, and I don't have a pointer, there's right below the pay grade on the top, it says total number of employees at the lowest hourly rate, and then you have a number. So for example, on the left one, 401, and it shows craft helper, we have 6 employees earning $9.01. Then if you look over here on the right, craft helper is the same 401, we only have 1 earning $8.80. Now going to the left, on the green square, that is the current employee's paycheck. So you'll see the gross pay, you'll see the federal tax, and then you see Medicare and other deductions. Other deductions can include things like TRS, the TRS active care, not active care, the TRC, and then they may also have any memberships to GEMS, for example, or a Section 457 or 403B. So that under other deductions, it's all combined. So again, the green is what the employee is currently earning. Now, on the first slide to the right in the red, that is a simulation if we wouldn't give an employee an increase and we would increase the employee's deduction by $20, so the health premium by $20. Now this is in this particular case, it's an employee gets paid twice a month. So you will notice right below the red square, there is a difference of net pay of negative 886. So you'll notice the employee gets the same gross, but under other deductions, you will notice that $10 are increased there. And again, this is one paycheck, they get 2 paychecks a month. So that employee will see a difference of 886 less per paycheck if the district would not give them a salary increase. Now, if you look to the bottom one in the blue square, that is giving the employee a 1.5 salary increase. So if you look at the bottom, the employee at that pay grade earning 1.5 salary increase will notice a 13 and 14 cents increase per paycheck, a difference net pay of $1.78 with the new deduction of an additional $10. So really the employee, I think one of the questions that came up last time is it going to be a wash? The answer to that, it's really not a wash. It's really still an increase for the employee because that is the lowest paid employee.
Mr. Vander? Mr. Carmona, if you could maybe please, what is pre-taxed? Because obviously right away our federal tax drops. So is the insurance, is that pre-taxed?
Exactly. The medical premiums are pre-taxed. TRS is pre-taxed as well.
Okay.
And then if you have like a 403B, an annuity, or 457, those are pre-tax.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campoy.
You're welcome.
What?
Nothing.
What did I say? Oh, sorry, Mr. Carmona. Thank you, Mr. Campoy.
Not a problem.
Looking at numbers here, okay? Come on.
So again, I'm going to go through them so that you can see. Please stop me. I'm going to try to go a little rapidly. I don't want to keep you here too long. But there's a lot of information. So again, if you need to stop me, stop me. These two scenarios are the lowest that you're going to see. So again, no employee, if the board were to approve a 1.5 salary increase and we go with the benefit plan that we're proposing, no employee is going to lose money. Okay, and again, this is proof of it. Now, going to pay grade 402, from this point forward, the left-hand side and the right side are two different pay grades. On the left-hand side, you have the custodians, bus monitors, 402. We have approximately 13, making $9.50 an hour. And as you can see on the bottom, they have, if we were to give an increase, they will get an additional $3.04 on their net pay. Over here to the right, the same scenario, you will see a difference of net pay a little bit less. The reason for that is this scenario has a CNS cashier. They work 187 days. The custodian works 239 days in a school year. So that's the reason why you see a lower amount on the net pay per paycheck. And this is pay grade 404. We have security guard there. We have 5 earning $11.71. As you can see, the difference of net pay is $5. So as we move on through the pay grades, you'll see the increase in net is greater. And then on this side, you have the bus drivers and mechanics. They will see an increase of $6.26 on their paycheck. And then we have the police dispatcher and police officer example, the CNS manager and police sergeant. And then we go to the paraprofessional. Now, paraprofessional, lowest paid employee earns $9 an hour, and that is a campus clerk, and we have 4 in the district earning $9 an hour. Same scenario. Now, on this one, for some reason, and I believe that they work 183 days, that is why you see that even with the 1.5 increase in this pay family, they will be short $2.19. But again, the difference is they work 183 days as opposed to the other example, they work 239 days. Going over to the right, a PE aide. PE aides also work 183. So PE aides will notice a negative 0.044 cents less on their paycheck with the new deduction. Then we have the parent liaisons. And from this point forward on paraprofessionals, there's no loss for any employee. The instructional aides, and then the HR graphic artist. Then we have the payroll specialist, it's one of the lowest, and then business manager. So this is it for the paraprofessional pay family. Now going into technology, now from this point forward, I don't have an hourly rate up there because these employees are not hourly employees. They get paid salaried, so we usually use their salary annually. So in this example, again, from this point forward with technology, everybody is getting an increase on their net pay. All these employees work 226 days. And then we have the system administrator, student systems coordinator, and then we have our network manager. This one, since you have it there, you're going to probably get confused, and I don't want to confuse you. This is the lowest paid employee for that pay grade. You're going to notice a difference of net pay 108. Please don't pay attention to that. The reason for that is there was an adjustment for this employee's paycheck on the current school year. The employee got an adjustment on a stipend, and we had to back pay them, so their checks were inflated. So when we look at the simulation, their paychecks go back to normal. Our system doesn't allow us to manipulate that. That's why it shows a loss. But I didn't want to take it out. I just wanted to show you all that is the lowest paid employee, but don't pay attention to that because it is correct the way it's in the system. I just couldn't have Ms. Stiles change the gross pay on the current. Now for professional, these are all the administrative positions. And the same thing with these, you'll see that every single one will get an increase in net pay. Here we have the coordinator of public relations, lowest paid employee in 101. Then over here, HR coordinator, lowest paid employee in 102. Then we have 103, 104, and if all these are just one or two employees. But as you can see, as we go further up, this is 105. That's where we have our assistant principals, licensed specialists in school psychology. That's they're still making a positive increase. And then we go to the principal, and we go to high school principal on the right-hand side, and then cabinet member level positions. Now, I don't have an example for a teacher because with a teacher, we work on the increase a little bit different. We have to do the step scale. But a perfect example for a teacher would be looking at the 102. That would be a starting teacher, around approximately $48,000 a year. Their paycheck would be around $4,000. So that is what a teacher will be looking at, and they would still be getting a net increase.
Mr. Nájera.
Mr. Campoy, I wasn't listening. I was looking at all the numbers. Can you repeat the explanation again? Why do we not have something for a teacher, and why are we comparing to the 102?
A teacher's pay scale is a step scale. Mm-hmm. So every time the board approves an increase, we move every step by a certain amount. Plus, we also incorporate or take into consideration what the board approves. So in that case, finance helps us with converting the whole pay scale for teachers, again, including what the board approved, which equals approximately 1.5%. So it would be very difficult for me to do that and provide you an example until we actually start working on the salary calculations for teachers. But the reason why I'm using the 102 is because if you get $48,000, our starting pay for teachers is $47,032. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of averaging it out because a lot of those get a stipend. So if they get a stipend, you're already looking at $48,532. So if we keep it at $48,000, you divide that by 12, their paycheck amount would be $4,000. So that's why I'm using the example on 102 that would be probably more or less correct for a teacher. Now, one thing that I need to remind you, this is a monthly amount. When I was going over auxiliary and para, that was semi-monthly.
Right.
So the 4115 is per month. The other ones that you were looking at for auxiliary, if they showed an $8 profit, it's $16 a month and so forth.
Okay, so but you're confident that when we go through all the calculations for a teacher, that the difference of net pay would be positive as well?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yeah, this is based on a 1.5 pay raise across the board.
Yes,
Could we consider a staggered? The people at the bottom of the ladder to get a little bit higher increase than the people that get paid more?
I see why not. Mr. Reza can look at the numbers and,
Yeah,
Yes.
if-
I think that would be something we discuss through the budget process if we're discussing it at that time. But we can certainly consider it. It's always possible.
We've done it before, but it just depends on money.
Suffice it to say, though, that if the increase was greater than 1.5%, the numbers would be
Great.
more positive.
exactly.
Okay.
But yes, Mr. Gonzalez, we can consider that. And that basically concludes my presentation on the paychecks. I'll turn it over to Mr. Reza.
President Gandara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. So with respect to this plan change of our healthcare plan, the question is, what are the impact, the fiscal impact on these changes if we go through the 3 years that we've talked about? So we're making some assumptions with respect to how it's going to impact that. But before I start talking about that, I want to just kind of go over and just let you know about our healthcare. What you're seeing is 3 years of actual expenses. These are audited financials. And then on the right, the 2017 projected revenue and expenditures for the healthcare plan should the district not provide any additional funding. So we're looking at as we're projecting about $42.5 million in revenue sources, about $47.4 million in expenses for almost a $5 million operating loss. Now we do have net assets of about $5.6 million. So if we don't do any additional, inclusion of revenues to the plan, you're looking at about $688,000 operating net assets. But I think it's important to keep in mind is that when you have a balance of about $688,000 in a healthcare plan, and you have $47 million in claims, that's hardly anything. And I think if that comes to fruition, then the district is looking closely, very strongly, at doing about a $2 million additional contribution into the healthcare plan. So it'd be about $2 million more expenses. Some of that, most of that is the general fund. The other one would be to the federal programs. And so if that were the case, our projected ending assets would be $2.6 million for the healthcare plan. And I strongly encourage and urge the district's approval of doing that because, you know, when you look at the claims that we're experiencing, $688,000 is practically nothing. But what I needed to do is, if we're going to do the plan design as part of this model to show to the board, I had to make sure we were going to do it as we discussed. So I want to just show you that, well, first of all, for 2017, we're looking at the district's contribution is $6,600 per eligible member, okay? And we're looking at about 5,243 members for that year. For the following year, the district is going to, at least what we have in our proposed priorities, and we're going to discuss with the board as we go through the budget process, is an additional contribution of $25 per month by the district on behalf of the employees. So that's $300 yearly. And when you compare that to 5,318 members, I'm assuming, making the assumption that we're going to add 75 additional employees for 2018 to the plan. So that's why I've increased that amount. So you're looking at what, almost $1.6 million in additional revenue going into the plan. Now I use the basis of what we collected, what we're projecting for the end of this year as a basis, as a starting point for the revenues for next year. And also we're looking at what we discussed is the increase in premiums for employees of $20 per month. You're looking at $240 yearly at 5,318 members. That's $1.2 million impact. So under this scenario for 2018, we're projecting $45.4 million in operating revenues. Now, the question becomes claims, expenses. I had to look at a basis as a baseline for expenditures for the year, and I used what we're projecting to end of this year, $47.2 million. Now, plan design, as Mr. Carmona talked about, the $4.5 million is spread over 3 years, and you're right, Mr. Ayub, it's about 3% reductions, and that's a lot. However, we are experiencing about a 6% inflationary cost for healthcare. And to be very frank with you, I think that's a very good number compared to other areas. So it's important for us to factor in a medical cost inflationary amount. And I'm looking at 6% based on the $47.2 million. So we have an adjusted amount of operating expenses that we're projecting for $48.5 million. And to be honest with you, that might be a little bit optimistic. But under this scenario, we're looking at about $3.1 million operating deficit for 2018. And again, we would recommend that the district put in an additional $2 million contribution. What we're predicating is that this year we put in $2 million extra by the end of the year, so we have $2.6 million. And under this scenario, we'd have a loss of $3 million, so we'd have to put another $2 million, so we can end up in the black of $1.5 million. So that's what we're looking at. Now, we're talking about year 2 of this plan design. So looking at 2019, again, I'm using as a basis our beginning revenues as a baseline. Now, at that point, the employee's contribution would go up $30 per month, and I'm assuming that we would add another 100 employees because we're growing to our plan. These are eligible employees, not the dependents, but the employees that we're contributing for. Based on that, I'm looking at almost $2 million of additional revenue for $47.3 million in revenue. Now, you're looking at expenses. I'm using the baseline, the ending expenses from the prior year as a baseline to start. I'm looking at the fact that our plan design, again, it's a $1.5 million reduction, but again, I'm factoring a 6% inflationary cost for healthcare because I think it's important. I think I would be negligent if I didn't have that there. And I'll be frank with you, I think 6% is a very good number considering some of the other expenses. Mr. Nakata will probably have more experiences with other industries, but for us, that's what I'm factoring into it. And so given that, we have almost $50 million in expenses. So we're projecting a $2.5 million loss. Again, because of the $2 million addition by the district on behalf of the employees, you're looking at about $980,000. Now, when you factor in the additional $2 million for our employees, you're really looking at about $7,269 that the district is putting on behalf of each employee based on these additional contributions. But I do think that it's necessary because it's important that we contribute to the healthcare plan. And then finally, again, I'm using now a $480 additional contribution by the employee for the year, for year 3. And again, I'm adding another 125 employees to our healthcare plan because by that time, we've got another elementary school, hopefully completed. We'll have staffing. So again, I'm looking at $50 million in revenues. But given our inflationary costs, about $2.5 million, and then the final design plan based on what we discussed, 1.4, we're looking at another operating loss of $932,000. And again, we're looking at another $2 million under this particular scenario. So this scenario says we need at least $8 million in additional contributions given certain assumptions. Now, I agree. Every year we need to reevaluate it. In the discussions that we've had with the benefit plans, with the benefit committee, our members are now realizing, you know what, we need to make sure that we talk to our fellow employees about this. Our plan, if you remember, 38%, and I could be mistaken, of our employees are driving almost 70% of our costs for 2016. So there's an awareness now that I think some of our employees are trying to communicate to fellow employees about this is our plan, not the insurance company. And maybe there could be some life changes, health, wellness changes that could be made to maybe reduce that cost. But the question from the board, the request from the board was, okay, what is this going to be impact making certain assumptions? And so the assumption is that we go through fruition, we do generate, a $4.5 million reduction in expenses over 3 years, but our medical costs are trending at about 6%, although this year I use 5%. I don't know if that's sufficient enough without these additional contributions on behalf of the employees that the district's going to have to make. So that is a scenario that we have. I try to be as realistic as possible. Mr. Carmona saying that now we're trending at 51 million. That kind of scares me. But I think it's important to realize that healthcare is very important, aside from salaries. And what I'm reading is I'm listening to right now the state finance plan. So they're talking about what's going on with respect to TRS Care and TRS Active Care. So TRS Care is the health care component of the retirement plan, okay? So TRS Care is about 1.3 to 1.5 million in the red. Okay, so that's the health care plan, not the pension plan, okay? The health care plan. So they asked a committee to study this plan and make recommendations. So they made recommendations on TRS Care and they made recommendations on TRS Active Care. Now with Active Care, the major complaint has been that their premiums are so expensive that teachers can't afford them. They just simply can't afford them, much less their auxiliary staff. And so what this committee recommended was, you know what, you offer one or two basic high deduction plans. The recommendation is that for school districts with 1,000 or more, I think it's employees, I'm not sure if it's students, but I think it's employees, they give them an offer. You can leave if you want. But if you leave, you can't come back. And the recommendation is if you have those school districts with over 1,000 employees, you kick them out. You're on your own. Now, with respect to TRS Care, they're recommending, because they're losing a lot of money because of those retirees that are under 65. Most of these retirees are from 60, to 65. TRS Care is actively providing that health care. And they're losing a lot of money. So what they're saying is that some of the recommendations, you give them a $400 stipend and say you go on your own, or you offer one high catastrophic insurance, and that's it. Unless you're, and if you're over 65, you go automatically on Medicare. So this is the scenario that we're presenting to the board. I believe that's what you requested at the last meeting. My apologies, I wasn't able to make it. So I did hope to be there, but the scenario suggests here that even though it is an impact to our employees, unfortunately, that is the world that we live in. And if it's our commitment to make sure that this healthcare plan is ours, then we're going to have to certainly continue to provide a substantial subsidy on behalf of the employees. So this scenario has about $8 million that we contribute over and above the increase that we're projecting for next year. And then the employees will probably kick in their $5 million. Are there any questions with these scenarios and maybe some of the costs?
Yeah. Why did you use 5% here?
I
And
felt
not
that by
7?
the third year, there's an awareness and people are working hard to be able to make sure that we improve, take more healthy steps. And I felt that it was something where I thought they would reap some of the benefits with respect to the inflationary cost. But the other 2 years, I used 6%. That's what we trended on last year. I felt it's something that I think it's going to stay the same because people, as employees know, changes are being made the following year. What do? You take up a certain medical issue. So those costs are going to probably stay the same or maybe go a little bit higher.
So you're determining that the 5% or the 6% is based on the employee making certain changes in their life and
Well-
not necessarily on the actual inflation of medical care?
That's correct,
Because
sir.
I think they're two separate issues, aren't they?
That's correct, sir. Now that 2018, I based it on the plan inflationary cost for our plan that occurred in 2016, and I continued it for 2019 as well.
And, I'm glad that you give us a dark scenario, because it's dark. But if year 2 does not come to that and we do see medical inflation less than that, would we bring all the premiums down?
Well, I think that's a discussion for that time, sir. I do
Okay.
think that this is just a model to show what would happen, but as Mr. Abe talked about, I think this is a discussion we're going to have every year to see how we're trending. And if we're doing well, that's why we have our own healthcare plan. We can make adjustments and reward the employees if we don't have significant claims, because that's the beauty of it. We can change it, we can tweak it, we reap the rewards. If we have a great year, perhaps we don't have to do something. Although, I'll be very frank with you. Even though these are major hits to our employees, I would hope that we would maybe hold the line for another year so that we can reap up some additional benefits. But that's just my opinion. We present it to you. You guys tell us where we're going to go, so to speak. But again, this will be a continuing discussion every year, so as we go through and see how we're trending.
Mr. Ayu.
Mr. Ganda. Well, I know we've talked about this now several times in finance and now in this workshop. I think you've brought up some very good points. One is, I'd like all of us and all of our employees to understand, the value they're getting for their dollars. What they're paying into insurance and the benefit plan that we provide is really very good. And the cost, we fight really hard to keep the cost down. The reason I knew more about the Isleta plan, I just called some friends of mine that I know in Isleta and said, tell me about your insurance plan. And again, Ms. Rodriguez has mentioned about the big changes that had happened at Clint. What I hope is our employees understand is that we're making every effort to provide them a very valuable and a value with their health care and lessen the impact to them. I don't think anybody would ever expect us to take the whole impact away. And based on what you've said, not only are we going to add $25 per employee to the plan for several years, at least 2-3 years, we're going to add $2 million to the plan in addition to that, so that we can keep their premiums low. And so I think the district, this may not be a very popular stance, but we are trying to make every effort not to gouge the employee, not to do what other places have done and said, if you want insurance, we'll make it available to you, but have at it, you pay for it. And so I think our employees are hopefully in a lot better shape than they are elsewhere. And I always worry that TRS one day will wake up and say, you know what, it'll just be TRS for all school districts and we want all your money to do it with, and our employees will get a lot less care and a bigger price tag, because everybody that's under TRS, you're right, some can't afford it, is what I heard from the friends I spoke to today to get a little bit more information. I would disagree with Mr. Gonzalez. I don't think this is a dark plan at all. I think when Clint raised their premium by $130 a month, that's a dark plan. At this point, most every employee may not see a very big raise, but they're not going to see a pay cut like happened in the other districts. And yet they'll be able to feel that their families are protected if somebody gets sick or ill, and we're making every effort to cut costs. I noticed you factored in a plan design reductions, but we've talked about other things as far as wellness. We've talked about employee clinic. We've talked about every other opportunity we can to reduce their costs so that in subsequent years, maybe it won't be so high. I'm not sure this is going to be our final plan. I'm sure there's still some area for discussion here, but I hope the employees realize that we have put quite a bit into this plan in order to support what their health care is. How much, if we give a 1.5% increase, what is that going to be the impact to the budget?
I believe it's a little bit under about 3.9, almost $4 million, if I'm not mistaken.
So that would be a 1-year type of cost. Now, over
Yes.
the 3 or 4 years you mentioned here, we're adding $8 million to the budget in order to defer their cost of health care so that they don't have to put it out of their pocket. I'm adverse to giving them a larger pay raise and then take it away for insurance. We're kind of not being clear on that. And so in this case, we are hopefully be able to afford a raise, but we're also investing a lot of district resources and funds in order to maintain their health care and maintain it at a lower cost. And it's obvious to me, look at the examples. We offer a much better premium than anybody else. And my big commitment is that we don't do these huge jumps, but the reality is things cost more, and if we can do it incrementally so that employees can plan accordingly, hopefully a little better, I'm okay with that.
So what this model is suggesting is that the district is making a conscientious effort to contribute over and above what we've got on a yearly basis for 2 to 3 years, so that the impact on the employee is not a sudden $90 a month or $100 a month extra. So that's a conscious decision. Now, with respect to the finances, I'm going to have to trend those expenses a little bit more. But we're in a strong financial position. I think we'll see what the legislature does with respect to this biennium. There's discussions, I mean, about increasing it. The House wants to increase it, the Senate wants to stay the same. So there's a discussion of maybe increasing the basic allotment. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But I do think that we can certainly just trend it through the years and see what we have to do about making sure that we keep this fund financially sound without impacting the employees too significantly and too quickly.
Well, and I would hope, obviously this presentation will be made public, that our employee will see the transparency here. The numbers are there, and that we're making every effort to be helpful with the employees and with our district. I always feel that it's partially my job as a board member to look after the health of the district. How will we be next year and the year after that, and the employees are important to me. And so that hopefully they can see that we are making every effort. And like I said before, we're all in the same boat. So
Yes, sir.
just a comment there, Mr. Gandara.
Mr. Gandara?
Mrs. Rodriguez.
At our last meeting, and this might be a question for Mr. Campoya or Mr. Carmona, we questioned, and there was some discussion regarding the number of employees and which employees, más o menos, are on the premium plan and which ones are on the basic plan and which employees are on the high deductible plan. Was that information, okay, sorry, I missed it. Thank you.
I was looking for it. I found it.
No, but that just has the number. We had talked about, like, administrators or, like, in other words, which employee, sorry, I'm chemo brain.
Distribution across the employee categories.
There you go, employee categories, that word, sorry. It was a gentle pat, but yeah, that word. We had talked about that, like, are more of our administrators on the Premier Plan versus our auxiliary employees. Do we have that information?
No, we don't, and I apologize because my understanding was different. I do have the number of employees per pay family, but what I can do is I can, with Mr. Carmona, run reports and include it in the Friday packet for you all.
That would be great, thank you.
So just to make sure that we provide the right information, you want to show numbers per.
Like,
I'll explain it.
okay.
Okay.
In other words, per pay family,
the Premier Plan, and you have the number of administrators in the Premier Plan, the number of paraprofessionals and auxiliary.
Okay.
Then the base plan, and then you have the
Got it.
yes.
Any more?
And I thought we had discussed that last time, so, and again, that, I think that would also help us in making the final decision on what we need to look at, just to look at how many, because this was great information, thank you, especially, Ms. Stiles, the projections, and, sorry, the simulations, very good information. But now, out of those different pay families, which are the employees that are going to be affected in each of the areas?
Yeah. And right now, just number of employees on administrative pay scale, we have 308. On technology, we have 57. Paraprofessionals, we have 807. Auxiliary, we have 1,248. Teachers, librarians, nurses, approximately 2,700. So, but we'll break it down for you.
Any more questions?
Well, at this point, this concludes our presentation. Our goal is to be able to have this item reviewed and, of course, with the additional information requested for the February 21st board meeting.
Okay.
For action, that's right, I'm sorry.
Okay. So no more questions?
No, sir, I'm good.
Okay, so thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned at 6:30.
You're welcome. I was like, why are you giving me your glasses? I forgot they was my glasses.